Hello, this is Debbie McAllister, and this is Light Up Your Worth. Boy, am I excited to share our guest today with you. This is going to be a different type of episode and a very, very personal one that I'm dedicating to my sister, Darlene Renee McAllister. And as you get through this, you'll hear more of why I'm dedicating this episode to my sister, who I love dearly. So, my guests today are Bret and Michael O'Dell, and they have this really super amazing podcast called Addicted to Life that was created to help fill a need and shining light on what addiction and recovery is. I just got truth bumps. We struggle with addiction most of our lives until they found a way to live a fulfilling, healthy, and positive life. Professionally, they own and operate a nutrition club called Excel Nutrition in their hometown in Missouri. We believe that physical, mental, and emotional health is necessary to sobriety and leading a successful, positive lifestyle in or out of recovery. They are now living successfully in recovery and hope to provide guidance, support, and love to those who need it most. And if you have to go see them on Instagram as well, I'll plug that because they have the most some of my most favorite Instagram reels right now on Instagram. So welcome, Bret and Monica.
Thank you. We're happy to be here.
Yeah, I am so excited that you're joining me, and I'm going to highlight for the listeners that they have a beautiful dream catcher up on their wall,
Thank
and
you.
I think it really goes really well with how you're really the encouragement and the positivity and the light that you're bringing to addiction.
Yes, thank you. It means a lot to us to be here, so we appreciate you inviting us today.
Yeah, it's personally touched my life and so many of my friends that I grew up with, and I'm sure everybody knows somebody who has struggled with an addiction, and I think we need to look at it from a different view. And that's why I reached out to you and so excited that you're here. So I want to hear, how did you go from where you were to how you are and the people, these amazing people that I see here together, happy, smiling, your
Yes.
energy, your positive vibes that you get off, right? And
Yes, I love it. Yes. So I came from, both of my parents were alcoholics. My dad was more of a functioning alcoholic. My mom was kind of progressed, which with alcoholism, it does happen that way. So in the beginning of my life, it was a little, I could tell a little bit that something was different with my mom, but eventually it got to a point where now, like, she's 60, 55, 60, and she has alcohol induced dementia. So that's how far her alcoholism took her. So that's kind of a little bit about my background. Like, growing up, we moved around a lot. Mom and dad separated. I didn't really start my heavy drinking till after high school. I was really heavy in sports and things like that. So I was pretty good in high school. But then when 21 came and, college years came and all my friends were partying, and it kind of was just normal. Like, like social society makes it seem acceptable and normal. And this is what you do at the age of 21 to 25 or whatever. But then it became more of a habit for me. And it was like, anytime I'm going to do something, I'm going to drink. And then fast forward 12 years, it was kind of like finding reasons to drink and then eventually hiding the drinks. I would have like bottles of alcohol in the freezer hidden underneath the chicken patties, or, that's when you realize, oh, I think, I have a problem. Not to say that I didn't realize that I had a problem previous to, my 12 years. So that's just a little bit about myself. I'll let Bret give a little bit of his background.
Yeah, mine's a little different. So she mentioned like with her mom and dad and the drinking. So I didn't have that with my parents. I grew up in, I guess you'd call like a very middle class, family, parents that were together and all that. There was never any drinking or drug use or anything like that. But I got into using drugs back in high school, and then especially when I was 17 and moved just a few hours away to college. Kind of similar to what she said. You kind of get out there and people are kind of doing, whether it's prescription drugs or, back then marijuana was the thing, and that quickly turned into like other illegal drugs. And it just steamrolled from there. And before I knew it, it was kind of similar to hers. It was on the weekends when we go out, and then it was 2-3 days a week. And then it was within a year, it was almost every day of my life of every different kind of drug. And that lasted for 22 years. So I've just been clean now a year and a half or so. And kind of like her, again, I keep saying that, but I knew that I had a problem. I knew, and everyone that was close to me knew I had a problem, but I justified it with, going to school, still, paying bills and having relationships that, and I kind of surrounded myself with people who were doing the same things that I were. And it kind of justified it, kind of gave me a sense of normalcy. Like, hey, what you're doing is normal. It's okay. Kind of like people nowadays going out, maybe drinking and things like that. Like she was saying, it's kind of the thing to do. You go out and you have drinks with your friends and you go and do this and you go to football games and events and you have drinks. I was doing that very same thing, but with people in houses that were doing drugs instead of just drinking, and it normalized it for me. It kind of set the bar real low for me. And I did that for many, many years. And before I knew it, it had been 22 years and many rehabs and many broken relationships and broken trust with people. And fast forward to a year and a half ago, I made the decision. Actually, I went to jail and for kind of an unrelated drug charge, but I went, and when I was in there, the judge was going to let me what they call PR bond, personal recognizance. They were going to let me out with just a signature saying I would show up to my court date. I actually got on video court with the judge and asked if I could stay in until I found a bed in rehab, because I knew that if I left right then and there, I was just going to go back to the same people, places, and things, which you'll hear me say a lot, that I've always done and always known, and I would be back where I always was. And I didn't want to do that. So they let me stay in. I actually stayed in for a little over 3 months until I got a bed in rehab and went and have never looked back since. Yeah. So it's been quite a journey, but it's been great getting to where we're at now. And so much has happened just in the last year and a half.
Yeah. So what got us to where we are now is funny story. Him and I, 15 years ago?
I think it was like 15 or 16
15 years ago, we were both like hardcore in our party stage. We kind of met up and hung out for a while.
And we still don't know how we ended up meeting up. We think it was through a mutual, but somehow we just ended up at a bar together somewhere.
Yeah. And then we hung out for maybe 2 months, 3 months. It literally felt like, it felt like a year or two. It felt like I was in a relate because we connected so well even back then, but we were both, he was doing he had his own life. He had his own job. He had his own career. He had his own family. And him and I were, just kind of buddies that hung out. And well, luckily nothing was ever like a relationship or anything, because neither of us were in the place that we needed to be. We needed this 15 years to pass and then to reconnect again, which happened by chance, actually.
Yeah.
Like I've had 2 kids since then. So I have 2 boys, a 12-year-old and a 5-year-old. He has
2 girls, an almost 17 and a 15, so 16 and a 15-year-old.
So we've gone through a lot of life experiences between then and now. But one day he moved back to Kansas City. It was after he had gotten sober. So he was I
was in an Oxford house, which is like a sober living house around here.
Yeah. And he had driven by, he was with his dad, and he had driven by this bar that my sister used to own, where we used to party all the time 15 years ago. And he was like, I wonder what Monica's doing these days. So he just happened to message me, and I also went to jail for a DUI. And this was a few months before he had messaged me, and I was just in the beginning of my sober journey, and he was just kind of in the beginning of his sober journey, and he was, messaged me, and I was afraid to tell him that I was sober, because I was like, well, Bret O'Dell is messaging me, and he was like my party friend. We had so much fun together, and so he messaged me, and I was like, just so you know, like, I'm sober now, and I don't drink anymore. And he was like, no way, I haven't drank in 10 years. And I'm also sober. Well, I didn't know that he had all the drug usage and all that stuff. He hid it very well, because I had no idea. back 15 years prior to this. But anyway,
well, just like when you said you were you were kind of scared or nervous to tell me that you were sober, I was just as scared when I thought about messaging her. You know what I mean? I'm like, I would like when I drove by there and I saw the bar, I'm like, she instantly popped in my head. I'm like, man, I just wonder what she's up to. Like, what's she doing nowadays? You know, it was nothing more or less than that. That's all it really was. And then when she responded, it was kind of like all those kind of feelings came back. And it wasn't even feelings like she said earlier, like relational feelings. It was just like, this girl was so much fun. We had so much fun and connected, like she said, on just a different level back then. But yeah, we totally were not in a place where it would ever go any further than what it was. But I was like, you have really all you can go by is, history, using history as your guide. And I remember thinking like, man, I'd love to like see her or hang out with her or have a coffee or something. But all I could remember was the Monica from 15 years ago that all we did was drink and partied and went out. And that was not part of my lifestyle anymore, nor did I want anything to do with it. So there was a part of me that was kind of like, oh, do I do it? Because like, what if I get my hopes up? Could this be a trigger for me? Because I really want to see her and catch up. But if she's still in that lifestyle at all, we can't do it. Like it wouldn't work. And that was probably one of the first, I guess, almost like mental boundaries I was having to set for myself. You know what I mean? Like, okay, if she is still in that lifestyle, you can message her a few times and see how things are going. But if she's still in that lifestyle, you can tell that stuff pretty quick. If she is, then Bret, you're gonna have to pull back, and it's gonna be nothing more than just, hey, I'm good to see you're doing. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So then we started talking. That was it was Halloween of 2020.
2020, yeah.
2020. So Halloween of 2020. And then we got married in March of 2021. And so we're coming up on our year anniversary. And between all that year, we have started a podcast, bought a business, integrated our families.
And our families too, not just with her family, like her kids, my kids, and other family members, but like my parents, and all like that, like there's a lot of disconnect. You do when you're going through alcoholism or addiction, you do isolation as part of that. You know what I mean? You intentionally isolate yourself and sometimes unintentionally, but bringing all that together, I think that's where you're going. It's having those relationships. And I always tell people, it's always just great to have the opportunity to build trust back and build a relationship. Not everybody's going to forgive you. Not everybody's going to be a part of it. They're going to love you from afar, from a distance, hope the best for you. You know what I mean? But just having opportunities to do that. I was so nervous when we got together, like, especially like she said,
she was like, I don't want to tell my parents that I'm in a relationship. I'm like, well,
and they knew her from 15 years ago, and they knew like, okay, the drinking thing, like, Bret, are you sure you want to do this? And I couldn't blame him. Who can blame him? You know what I mean? To the outside world, it's like, dude, that's not a very smart thing, probably, because they're using history as their guide. You know what I mean? My history specifically, which wasn't the best on that. So, but it all worked out. We went with our gut, we went with our heart, and luckily we were both in the exact same place in life. We always say that, like, we couldn't have come together at any other time than the exact time that we did. It couldn't have worked, wouldn't have worked, shouldn't have worked, except for that time, that exact time in life.
Yeah. So we're going through the recovery process and all that together. And it makes it nice, because not everybody, I think it's very rare that people have that and are able to be successful in it,
Exactly.
Yes, that you both are committed to the same lifestyle, the same sobriety. And so as a normie, that's what I'm I know that I'm a normie, right? One of my dear friends who's been in recovery, she calls me I'm actually her only normie friend left. And but you mentioned some really good stuff, and I want to kind of go back into it, is that you talked about normalizing and triggers and timing. So I kind of wanted to dig into some of that, like at the beginning of both of your journeys, how it's so normalized in our cultures, like, oh, you're 21. Yeah, you're supposed to go out and have this good time, and that everywhere we go, the drinking is involved.
Yeah. It's a normal thing. They make everybody feel like, oh, this is something that you do. You turn 21 and that's part of your life forever. But they don't point out the fact that so many people struggle with alcohol. Like once you start drinking it, it leads you into this dark hole. Like, not everybody is going to become an alcoholic. Yes, there are many people out there that can have one drink out with their friends once a year, and then they're good with it. But there's a lot of people that I know that are like me that go out and have one drink and then another drink and then another drink until I don't remember the night. And then I wake up the next morning and I'm like, oh my gosh, what did I do? So yeah, it's very alarming and very scary for people that, are apt to doing that.
I always feel like whether it's alcohol or any kind of, I don't care if it's, I keep bringing up marijuana because, now it's recreational, legal a lot of places. I don't care what it is, what the substance is, but I feel like, in addition to what she was saying, anytime that anybody starts to use that substance, whatever it is, to deal with pain, anger, stress, anxiety, depression, things like that, when they start using that to numb it, to minimize, to push it down, and it becomes a regular thing, that's a problem. Again, whether it's an illegal substance, it's alcohol, whether it's sugar, shopping, whatever it is, that's when it becomes a thing. And she brings up a good point too, like with the drinking, like mine was, and we say it all the time in our podcast and all of our stuff, but drugs were my thing. Alcohol was never a thing for me. Like I haven't drank in years. That just kind of goes to show not all drug addicts are alcoholics and vice versa. But like she was saying, how some people can pick up alcohol and not think about it again for a year. That's kind of how I was, not with drugs. You know what I mean? And I also knew, quote unquote, friends. You'll see me do that a lot in my little circle, right? That, might go out one night and do some sort of drug, whatever. And they may not do it again for a year or two and never think about it again and things like that. But that wasn't me. But when people start to normalize it, where they start to use it to deal with all those things I mentioned, depression, anxiety, a stressful day at work, a stressful weekend, problem with their kids, whatever it may be, there's, financial, whatever it is.
All the excuses.
Yeah. All the excuses.
Yeah. The other area that it leads beautifully from what you're talking about, Brett, is that where I've seen, at the beginning of the 20s, I saw where I was partying and having a good time on the weekends, and then it started to happen sometimes on a weeknight. Still got up, was very functionable, went to work, did stuff I started to notice with my own friends, like, oh, that's starting to become like every time I see you, you're high or you're drinking, and I remember having those thoughts of like, I wonder what it feels like to go to like a concert without
drinking,
like
or anything,
or
that's the realization of it.
And so but I had this this traumatic event happen when I was just about 21, is that my my best friend died in a horrific car accident. There was no alcohol or they were car racing, and so it wasn't caused from alcohol or drug use. But what happened is that there was a core group of our big group, at that age, we have these big, I feel like, posses. And he died in this horrific car accident, like, and he died that weekend. We purchased an illegal drug for the weekend, and we stayed in that house all weekend, could have played pool, and that's what we did. And we drank and we would sleep, and then we would play like card games, and we were just all there in this like pain bonding, I think, they call it, right? Trauma bonding, right? Like we couldn't believe, not only did he die at 21, but it was a horrific death, horrific. Right. And that was an instant. And so this group of friends, looking back, almost all of them became addicts. Just about everybody in this core group became an addict. Myself and my best friend did not. And I think it's because we were able to like give each other a sanity check, like, actually cry, feel our feelings and do this. But what I've noticed is, as I'm in my 5th decade here, is that I've seen so many friends who are like, oh, I'm going to come home and have that glass of wine after that hard day or a really painful breakup, a divorce, and they start
Yeah.
having with knowing they're not out partying. And
No,
next
yeah.
thing you know, they're struggling.
Yep. They're looking to numb those feelings. Yep.
Happens more often than you would think, all the time, and maybe not more often than you think nowadays. It's become,
Right.
yeah,
It's normal. People are like, oh, my kids are driving me crazy. I think I need a glass of wine.
Right.
You know?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
society's kind of accepted that. It's kind of like, again, it goes, they kind of said, this is the norm. It's okay to do.
And
you know?
Yeah.
unfortunately, for those of us that can't control it, don't know otherwise, you know?
Mhm.
Well, and I kind of want to think about that too, is that you can't control it, but I really believe in the white papers that are done that it is something in our DNA as well, that it's not
Oh, yeah.
necessarily, oh, I can control myself. It's just when glass thinks, you know, it's the bottle and you've passed out and you get up and you go to work.
Yep.
Yes.
And
That front, oh, go
Mhm.
ahead, sorry.
No, go ahead,
I
because
was going to say that frontal lobe for everybody, where kind of the addiction and those decisions are
Mhm.
made, and those things that kind of make up, like you were saying, in our DNA. That's a real thing. You know, we talk about that too. Like, that is a real thing. That's why there's, you know, a lot of times there are people who can go out and have that glass of wine here and there after work or with their friends, or what I was saying earlier, someone who can do, you know, party one night and do some illegal drug and then maybe not do it again for years because that's just not in there. It's part of it. There's other factors too,
Mhm.
obviously. Yeah, that frontal lobe where all that's done, those neural pathways and the synaptic gaps and the synapses
Mhm.
firing, it's a real thing. Again, like learning more about that as I went through my addiction, even especially towards the end and now in recovery, like that's why I know I cannot take anything, you know, like prescription or not, like Tylenol,
Mhm.
ibuprofen, that's about it for me. You know what I mean? And I just,
Mhm.
it's not worth the risk, you know? So not worth it, you know?
Yeah, I think having that awareness that it's in you
Yeah.
is a really big gift for somebody to realize for themselves. Um,
Mhm.
I know that there's addiction in my family, and so for as long as I can remember, if I had like a minor surgery and they give you pain pills, I'm like, okay, 2 days and no more. And I remember my son's dad used to make fun of me. What do you think's going to happen? And I'm like, I'm not taking a chance. You know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah, I'll tell you what's going to happen. I'm going to take 2 now, and then I'm going to take 2 later, and then I'm going to take 4 the next time, and then 10 the next time. You know, it just keeps getting,
That's how it goes.
snowballs. It snowballs because the drug does that to you. It does. It changes your mind, and
Mhm.
it makes you dependent upon it.
Yeah,
And
that's the word.
it tricks your mind into thinking it needs it.
Yeah,
You know,
I always use the words chemically dependent. You know, that's something you'll hear in the addiction and recovery talk. I mean, there's a lot of people I knew that had like a major surgery. I had back surgeries years ago, 4 of them, you know, and of course pain pills. And yes, I knew what I was doing back then too. But at the same time, there are people who aren't addicts, you know what I mean, that have a legitimate reason, a surgery or whatever, and they're on pain pills and they don't realize that you become chemically dependent to it. So you're not addicted, but your body chemically is dependent on that drug and effect. And that's kind of where the withdrawals come in. And even the feeling of, I still have pain, you know, from my surgery that all in all should be gone. And, you know, a long time ago, you know what I mean? But that it tricks you, you know, it's those neural pathways that we're talking about that get reshaped and formed, you know what I mean? So
yeah.
it's a real thing, you know, and then that chemical dependency soon turns into addiction for some people,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
it really does. So it's a scary ground to play on, you know, it's scary.
Yeah. And one of the things that you talked on with triggers, is there work that you've both done with understanding like what your triggers are or people that you are supporting, like you've noticed their common triggers working
honestly,
towards their own recovery? Mhm.
Yeah.
what do you have to
Okay,
say? Yeah.
so I'm glad you asked that. So like for me, I would love to sit here and tell you that I had these certain things or certain people, places, things that were
Mhm.
triggers for me. And of course, going to like an old, you know, drug house with some friends, you know, that I used to do drugs with, that's obviously a trigger. But in all reality, I didn't really have like a certain amount of like a few like defined triggers. For me, it was just that constant. It was like I was my own worst enemy, my own trigger all the time. You know what
Well,
I mean?
you made it part of your like everyday, like
was
it was
every
part of
day.
his schedule. So like wake up, I have to do this drug
Yeah.
because if I don't, I'm going to start withdrawals.
And I'm gonna get
So he
sick.
made it a part of like his,
Mm.
like that's how his addiction
Mhm.
was.
Mhm.
So I don't know if that triggers really played a role in that,
Yeah.
because it was just part of his everyday life. For me, I guess I would say my triggers were just my emotions, and I don't, just I think what I would tell other people is to learn to sit with your emotions, feel the emotion, deal with the emotion, and let it go. However that looks for any person, you know, go to therapy, write it down, you know, get it out of your mind, but deal with the feelings, because that's my thing was always just numbing whatever I had going on in my mind. I had a rough childhood coming up, and I had lots of failed relationships. And I mean, most of this was due to alcohol. Well, all of it was due to alcohol. Now that I say that, my childhood was because my parents drank. And as I got older, my relationships were bad because I was drinking.
With that cycle. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you said that, because I think like when you were talking, there'd be times throughout my 22 years of addiction where I would like, I'm done. I need to stop. I need to quit. Right. And I would stop for a few days, right? Depending on what drugs I was, consistently using, then maybe I could, maybe I couldn't. But there were times when I would want to stop, and I'd go, X amount of days or whatever. And the feelings, dealing with reality, dealing with all those things that drugs or alcohol minimized and pushed down to where you didn't feel, you didn't think about, they didn't carry the weight that they do with normals, right?
Mhm.
That would be my trigger. As soon as I'd start to feel that even a little too much, you know what I mean? I can't deal with that. I don't want to deal with that. I won't deal with that. Pick your poison. And I would use again, and that would obviously in 20 years happen quite a bit, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
But it is, like she said, sitting with your feelings, letting yourself feel that, giving your mind, your body, your spirit a chance to actually process that and begin to work on those
Mhm.
feelings, and what you do with them is
I've noticed in shows, so you say the word triggered, and I think like I know what it means, but I like in TV shows, I say this because this is where I see it mostly.
Mhm.
But people are like, oh, I'm triggered. And it's mostly like the younger generation use that word
Mhm.
a lot, which I'm not dismissing that or saying that, people oftentimes it feels like people use that as an excuse, like you're triggering
Mhm.
me and now I'm going to go do this
Mm.
because you did this to me. So it's like another one of those, you need to learn how to deal with conflict, deal with obstacles, deal with life in general.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like learning how to live life with all the problems and trauma and all the triggers that come along with life. And I think that's more or less how I feel about triggers,
Yeah, that's a really good point, because it's really pointing the finger of not holding yourself accountable. Like you can't really change how you're behaving, but you can definitely look at yourself and what that's feeling for yourself.
Mhm.
I'm dedicating this episode to my sister who did lose her life to addiction, and hers started really young. Like she was 12 years old going out, I think, smoking cigarettes, and then it was smoking pot. And when our parents divorced, if I was in fifth grade or sixth grade, she would have been like second grade. And just don't think she really ever had like knew how to cope. And back in the 70s, people didn't really put much on. We were the first generations of divorce, and there wasn't really a lot of support for the children who were the products of the divorce, which it really was the best thing for our family, for my parents to divorce. And then by the time she was, gosh, 14, 15, she was out. She was literally out of control. My parents had to do, at that time, the resources were pretty limited, and they did like the tough love thing. There was some TV movie back then, about sending kids to jail. And I don't even know how many times my sister was in jail, obviously. But, they had to kick her out of the house when she was still in school. She dropped out. She actually had my parents' house broke into, and she did a lot of personal damage to some personal things. And so the police are like, yeah, this was personal, whoever broke in and, did these things. And
Right.
at one point we lived in Northern California. She went down to LA and, did some stuff so she could have money to continue her whole thing. And luckily for her, my grandmother went down and actually got her off the streets. And, it was a tough time for the family. And I think what happened is that she separated herself and went through this really big cycle. At one point, three children in, she got she went to rehab. I think she was forced to as well through being arrested. And
Mhm.
she went into this program and she got clean. My sister was clean for almost 2 years, and her partner was in prison. And I built this relationship with my sister, and the things I'll never forget is us sitting on my couch. She has her three boys. Our sons were about the same age, around 10 at that age. So she had like 9, 7, 6, and I had a 10-year-old and as cousins. And I'll never forget my sister sitting there, and she was learning a trade. And we actually had, for the first time in our both of our lives, a relationship. And she said that
Aw.
that this was worth everything.
Yeah.
But she really struggled with everyday life. She would tell me, like, I'm having to feel everything that I haven't felt since I was very young. And it's a bit much. Like,
It's rough.
It's a
it
lot.
It's
was,
rough.
It's heavy. It really is.
hmm
Especially going through what, like you said, y'all went through and at that age and with the
Mhm.
limited amount of resources, when you go that long, it's the hardest thing. That's what drives, I think, a lot of people back into that vicious cycle that they get caught in, because dealing with that stuff is very, very hard. Even if you have a ton of available resources, it is hard because you're feeling so many things that are brand new. You're feeling for the first time. And
hmm
if you've never had any time to really process those and come to grips with them, it's like trying to do that just alone is hard, but let alone now you're trying to live a life outside of the one kind of life you've always known, addiction and everything that comes with it.
hmm
It's
That's
especially hard when you don't have anybody who has the knowledge to help you get through that time, having that support. Yeah, the support system. And especially a support system that understands why you're doing the things that you're doing,
hmm
If they don't understand it, they're like, oh, well, and especially coming from that hard love place,
Mhm.
the you'll be fine,
Mhm.
pick yourself up, you can do it, stop thinking that you can't, it's not that. You need to hold their hand, be a little more empathetic,
hmm
sit with them, feel the feelings with them, give them an example of, how you felt that way, and empathize with the feelings that they're feeling, and try to feel those feelings with them, and sit with them, and just let that moment be, and allow them to feel the feelings, and just be there, not telling them what they need to do next, not telling,
Right.
just being there,
Yeah.
and a lot of times that can help with, sitting with the feelings. Maybe you don't want to do it alone. If you have to do it alone, then you're like, oh, well, it'd be a lot easier if I just drank a
Right.
fifth of vodka. That would be
Mhm.
easier.
Exactly what she said. I think that's like getting sober and making the decision to get sober was great, but getting 3 months, 6 months, a year and a half into it, if I wouldn't have been able to earn the opportunity to have her support, my parents have been a huge role. Having that support, my kids, like, again, you have to earn that a little bit, because history is your guide,
Mhm.
as I mentioned before. Everybody's a little reluctant, no, I don't blame them, but having that support and people to empathize with me and to give me any kind of, what do you want to say, positive feedback, encouragement,
Positive reinforcement.
positive
Yeah.
reinforcement, or it goes a long way. And then that starts to snowball, and then you start to get in that cycle of things, and it does build over time, but finding that is hard.
It is very
It's
hard.
hard. That's why I think a lot of people, not all, but a lot, go right back into the ways that they know, the life they know.
People don't know how to make that mind shift set. They don't even know how to start. They don't know the word mindset shift,
Mhm.
like, what does that mean? I
Mhm.
think we need to normalize shifting your mindset and using your mind to really change who you are, and change the life that you're living, and change the way you think about things, like, I still struggle every day. I'm not going to lie. there's oftentimes I'll just sit and talk to Bret. I'm like, gosh, I sit here and I think about my mom and what she's going through right now, and it depresses me and it hurts me. I'm gonna get teary-eyed.
Yeah.
But it's still a struggle for all of us. So.
Yeah. I had my my ex-husband who had been clean through NA. That was his poison when alcohol no longer worked for his traumatic childhood. And he told me that every day it's a struggle for him, even after 17 years. And I thought, what a beautiful thing that he says that out loud, and that he provides himself that he has a community that he connects with, and those is his lifeline, his sponsor, his friends, how they connect. And at the beginning of the pandemic, when we were still together, his meetings went online because he's a regular. He participates in NA, and that was his community that he found. That helps support him. Do you believe that it's the community support that can
Absolutely.
almost make or break?
Absolutely.
100%.
Yes.
100%. And whether you're getting it like he was from NA or AA or any of those, or a church or a friends group, like I was going to NA meetings and things like that, some in person, some online, because it was during the pandemic. But it's like I was just saying a few minutes ago, like I got so lucky and blessed to meet Monica when I did have her come in my life at that time, because I didn't even realize it until months later, looking back, like how much she helped me, just how much our relationship and us, not just that I connected so well with, and not just because she was going through something similar, but because she empathized with me. She listened. She didn't try to condemn me. She didn't try to point out all the wrong that I did and remind me of that. You know what I mean? And that's like what, he was getting probably from NA and AA. There's no judgment there. There's no condemnation. It's just like, hey, we've all done this. We've all been here. Any story that guy has, I probably have one too. You know what I mean? We're very similar.
And it makes you feel normal, and the drug use and all that can tend to make you feel alcohol abuse, that sort of thing. It can make you feel like, oh, I'm different. Why am what is wrong with me? Why can so-and-so go drink for a night and then not have another drink for all these years? It makes you feel like you're out of place. But when you have that community and you're in a place where people are just like you, which there's many of them, and a lot of times people don't even speak out about it because they're afraid of what people are going to think about that outsider. People are going to look at you and be like, nope, I don't want to be that person. I don't want people to look at me and think this about me.
I think you really highlighted the importance of, in recovery, there's a lot of shame and a lot of guilt that gets buried, and that has to be brought out. Like, you teared up, I'm keep tearing up, and Bret's, giving you the encouragement, like, it's okay to feel what's coming up. As a society, I think sometimes we're told, pull up your big girl pants, pull up your, just man up there, man. Just come on, just man up. And that we're somehow less than, because though I don't have an addiction to alcohol or any chemicals, I am addicted to sugar. I've been trying to break the habit of sugar for years, and I'll be darned if something doesn't happen and I feel myself like craving something to help with whatever I'm feeling, and allowing ourselves to feel these feelings and to support those and encourage each other to feel what we're feeling, that we shouldn't be afraid of it. And
exactly.
And it is hard. I want to add to what you said a second ago. This is kind of what we're talking about. Like, I always tell her too, it's like, when, for myself and for so many people that I've known over the years, when they decide to get sober, when they actually do get sober, right? It's a great feeling. I don't want to minimize it for myself or anybody else, but that only lasts for so long, right? When you're addicted to drugs or alcohol or whatever it is for however long, and then the day you get sober, there is this natural high that you get, right? And when others in your circle that know you start to see you and see, like, wow, so-and-so's, Bret's sober now. Look, it's been a week, it's been a month, it's been 2 months, right? Everybody's excited. You're excited. You're starting to talk to some people and that you hadn't talked to in a long time. You're feeling good. That quickly goes away. just like the high of the drugs goes away over time, right? So
Mhm.
then I think going like to our podcast and what Monty was just talking about is the mindset. It's like, okay, now that the high, right, of deciding to get sober,
The hype, everybody's all
the
excited for
hype,
you.
yeah, it's like, now what? Now what? I've also seen people go back in addiction too when they get sober for 3 months, 6 months, whatever, and that hype goes away, and they're like, oh my gosh,
They're
like
again alone,
now,
sitting with their
and they're
feelings,
expected,
having to figure.
society expects you, okay, like that's great that you got sober, but now you have to work, you have to pay taxes, you have to handle your responsibilities, you have to go to the grocery store, see the doctor about your condition, whatever it is regularly. You have to do all these things now that you weren't doing before, right? And they're, to normies, as you call it, that's just normal life, but to addicts or whatever, that's not normal. You know what I mean? So it's like the mindset she's talking about. And that's why I'm so grateful for her too, is because she's got me. I've been to that point before. And now it's like there's so much that we've experienced and that she's even taught me that's like shifting my mindset, right? Filling my life with these positive experiences that replace all the highs and the lows of addictions. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like shifting that mindset now and just seeing things from a different lens.
Learning how to live a normie life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Normally like,
Well, and just so you know, as a normie life, there's a lot of things that we all struggle with
right.
trying to
Yeah.
just keep up with, right? Like trying to make
Yeah.
time for. And so for anybody listening, I want that whether they're normie, I don't actually like this term. So when I got told it, I'm like, what's so normal? I'm not normal anyway.
Right.
So
You're like,
what,
not normal.
Yeah.
but my struggles are different, but going through everyday life is challenging for all of us. And I think mindset is so, so important. So through your journeys and through the people like listening to your podcast, what are some, tips or with the support that, help you? Like, do you have mantras that you use? Like, or even how could I have supported my own sister when she made that decision to take that first, you know, next shot that happened, you know, and when she had been almost 2 years, in this place, what could I have done to have supported her better? Because what I knew at the time, I didn't know about limiting beliefs. I didn't know about the stuff in our subconscious. I didn't really quite understand then about shame and how heavy that can be,
Mhm.
and the capacity to handle so much responsibility. And what I see now and what I'm hearing from you is this almost like it's like if you're learning a new job, they don't teach you everything in the first day. Like
Right.
gradually taking on more and more responsibility. Um,
Yeah.
I think I could have helped her there, but I was a bossy older sister. I just thought she just needed to get on with it, right? Like, okay,
Mhm.
you're clean now. Like, okay, you're learning how to get a job. You got 3 kids. You gotta, like, they're out of control. Like, they were all in therapy too. And then all of a sudden, all this support, she just walked away from it all. And so, what would you offer to those listening who are struggling for themselves or a loved one that they know? You know, I know your podcast is full of some really good stuff, but what would you like to share with us here?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is to get into a daily routine and make sure that you have some sort of self-care in that routine. Like in our bio, you read health, physically, mentally, emotionally are all so important.
Mhm.
I think that the number one thing you have to do is take care of yourself physically, mentally, and emotionally in some way every single day, and don't skip any days. And then, yes, days are going to be harder. Some days will be harder than other days, but it's so important that you learn to love yourself. So allowing yourself to feel the feelings, right?
Yeah.
And then also figuring out a way to take care of those feelings, and be in some sort of community, have some sort of person or people that you can go to that understand where you're coming from, have been through what you've been through, so that they can empathize with you. I think that is a big thing.
I was going to say the exact same thing, that having that support, whatever it is, whether it's a person, a group or whatever, and I know, like for me, having someone that I could talk about those feelings that we talked about, right? That shame, that weight that you're carrying, that I knew I could let it out. If for nothing else, just I could let it out and not be judged or condemned, like I was saying earlier. And that someone would just be there just to nod their head or to say, man, I didn't realize all that, Bret. You know what I mean? And just, if nothing else, just that alone, it was huge, because so many times it's like what you were saying, and I've experienced it my entire life. We all have. Why are you making that decision? Tough it up. You know what I mean? You got a good job. You got to do these things. Like, just what are you doing? Because we don't understand it. Some people just don't understand that, what they're carrying. So having someone that you can do that is, I think it's huge.
And for people with a loved one that struggles, it's just to empathize, just to listen, just be there. Don't say, why do you do this? Why do you do that? Why do you do this? Why don't you just stop that? Just listen and just be there and be a shoulder to cry on. I think that is the biggest miss for people who are trying to support somebody. It's like, well, they don't get it. So it's like, and why don't you just stop, but don't do that. Just be there.
That's a deterrent. That
don't give them anything.
Right.
Let me say. So that's also important, that you don't enable them. I'm not here to be like, oh yeah, I feel for you. Here's a drink, or here's some money to help support you. Don't give them things. Just be with them and give them empathy. That's I think the biggest thing that you can do is just be there.
Yeah. I agree 100%.
It's hard to say because everybody's different. And like when I was a child, I wanted to help my mom so badly. Obviously, I was very young and I didn't understand life and how all that stuff worked, but I wanted, still to this day, I wish there was something I could say to her to want her to change, and it was always threats like, Mom, we're not going to be together anymore if you keep doing this. I'm not going to be able to live with you. Or, your husband today this isn't working out. This is a dangerous situation. None of those things mattered to her. All that mattered to her was that she was drinking and that she was numbing all of the pain that she had, but she didn't have anybody that was empathizing with her, that was listening to her. It was all condemnation,
Talked about. And I think too, on that note, as simple as it may sound, it's like, if you are a loved one of someone who's, struggling, right, in addiction, whatever, they have to want it themselves. Right. You can't ever, like she was saying, you can't threaten them. You can't judge them. You can't use logic with them. Like, at the end of the day, they may get it in a week. They may not get it for 22 years, like myself. You know what I mean? And they have to want it ultimately, so don't ever try to, my advice would be, don't ever try to use threats or condemnation or any of those things. Like, they know what they're doing. They know what they're doing, who they're hurting, how they're hurting themselves and those around them. But they ultimately, at the end of the day, they have to want it. They have to want it, and you just have to put yourself in a position so that when it comes to the time that they want it, you're there and you're the person they go to. You're the person you go to. You're the first one they think about whenever that time comes when they want it. That's my advice.
That's really good advice. I think when you talk about too, the whole numbing, like when you reference back as your mom as an example, is that my sister didn't realize the amount of pain that she had caused because she had numbed from feeling.
Yeah.
And what was beautiful during that time that she was, clean or sober, was that she was willing to hear it, like not in a hateful way, but, like this situation here really was painful for me. And so that's why I had to walk away and think of put distance between us. And so I'm feeling all the feels as we talk through this. But I think your advice, your guidance is really powerful, just to allow people to feel what we all feel. It's okay. And I believe that even if we all grow up in the same household, if we have like a sibling, is that their experience, what I know now, I didn't know then, is that their experience of that same household is much different than our experience.
Mhm.
whether we're the oldest or the youngest or somewhere in between.
We all see life through a different lens. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys are just amazing. Thank you for being here. So I want to ask some two questions that I'm asking all my guests. And before I do that, I wanted to see if there's what else would you like to share that I didn't allow the opportunity yet that you really want to be clear on in your messaging to the audience?
Yeah, for sure. So our Addicted to Living podcast is all about shining light on the stigma of addiction. So we kind of touched on that a little bit in this episode, how the stigma on addiction is shameful and makes you feel lesser than, or, but it's not. It's not shameful. You're not less than. It's just us realizing and becoming more of what we can be, what we are, what we instill in our own bodies and in our own lives. So I think that we just want to provide a light and shed a light on that stigma and try to shift the stigma on addiction and really be a positive light for the people that are in addiction or in recovery or have loved ones who are in recovery.
And just to be a resource for people in addiction or loved ones of people they know in addiction, because like the stigma is real, like the last question you asked us about what advice would you give to a loved one of someone going through addiction, to help them out. Like there's a lot of people who just don't know that because of that stigma, and just if we can be a resource, a channel, right, a vehicle that someone can come to and just find out stuff and ask the hard questions and what to do. That's what we want to be ultimately.
Yeah.
So for sure.
I wanted to add to that is that one of the things I've learned too is that I'm an energetic healer, is that and I don't know what anybody's beliefs are who's going to be listening to this, but there's a thing called entities, and they like to attach themselves to people who are struggling with addiction or who are an addict. So though they could go work hand in hand with a therapist, a community, but also getting energetic healers to actually help them clear it out. And as they go through the process, like you would with therapy, it works with therapy to really help clear that out so that you're able to shine more of your light and to really step into it. And I really want to make sure that everybody who's listening and that you guys both know, Bret and Monica, that you are worthy.
Thank you. I
Appreciate
agree.
that.
I agree. Yes.
You are so worthy, and just, stepping forward with the stigma, so important, right? Because who wants to know, like, to publicly come out and say, oh yeah, I've been arrested on this, or like that in itself has stigmas. And so I am just so proud of you to be able to step forward and be this light, because it is so needed. I know since the pandemic that numbers have rose with people feeling, and people are still feeling more isolated. And as they go out now back into society, all that angst that comes with maybe they've been drinking to get through it, or they've been doing, through marijuana is so legalized in so many places, or other drugs, prescription drugs. So thank you for shining this light. I'm just so honored that you've been here. So
thank you for having us. We're honored to be a part of it. Absolutely.
Yeah,
thank you.
Really are.
And I just, and want to announce too of how much I forgive my sister, for all of the pain, because it's really not just for her. It's, I think, for us as people who have lost those that we love because they weren't able to find that love for themselves. So thank you.
Yes, it's beautiful that you're able to do this in her memory, and I think that that's awesome. I think it's very good for you and your healing as well.
Very healing.
Yeah. Yes. So thank you for allowing that space for me too, and for everybody here. So I have two questions for you. The first one is that, so we've been talking about mindset and that shift. And so when I'm a huge fan of music, music just can change a mood, can change everything, I think, within us. And so I'm asking my guest on what's a song, that can help pick you up or keep you going if you're doubting yourself or, and you're on that. And I would love to hear
Do you
your,
have one?
like, if you
I have
have a
one.
song or an artist that you like to throw on that gets you moving or kind of just shifts your mind or your mood or.
I have one.
What's yours?
Mhm.
So John Mayer's my go-to
Oh,
artist, right?
okay.
Appreciate his talent, his voice, and all that, his artistry and all that. And if you want a specific song, it was actually a song my oldest daughter sent me when I was in detox one time back in California. It's called "In Repair." Right. So the words of it, like every time, and I don't listen to it often anymore, but I think I started again recently, but I used to listen on repeat, right? And that detox center, they let you have like a little mini iPod back then when they had the little mini ones,
Mm-hmm.
and it just played on repeat. She put the whole album on there for me, and I could just sit there with my headphones and my iPod and listen to that. The words are good, the lyrics, the message and the song is good. You got a little mid-riff guitar solo in that. That's pretty sweet, and I just love John Mayer. And I think it's like an uplifting, positive song with a good message and obviously good guitar playing. So that's mine. Yeah. If I had to pick one, that's like what I pick.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. A very uplifting artist for me, I would say, is Jack Johnson. And Banana Pancakes is my go-to song. If I want to be in a feel-good mood, Banana Pancakes by Jack Johnson, #1, very easily.
I forgot about that one. It makes me want to eat pancakes when I hear
I
it.
know.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I
I'm like,
have
I
to
want some
look that
banana
up.
pancakes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Who's
banana
got
pancakes. That sounds kind of good.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
I'll have that for
IHOP?
dinner.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh, lovely. I'm adding these all to a playlist that's just, it's just at the beginning stages right now. I need to get enough
I love
songs,
it.
but
Yeah.
so I will definitely add these to there. So the second question, and I'd like to hear from both of you, is that looking back now at your younger self, what would you tell them?
Actually, you answer. Can we go first?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm using what you just said this at just a few minutes ago as my answer. Sorry, I'm emotional. I would tell myself back then that you are worthy. You are worthy. You are enough. Despite anything that's happened to you, things that are going to happen to you, you are enough. You're worthy just the way that you are. That's it. Like when you said that to us a few minutes ago, that was like, man, if hearing that, it's not that no one did that for me, just I didn't believe it. So I would tell myself like, hey, dude, grab me by the neck, believe it, believe it. I think that would have done a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love you.
It's a big virtual hug going on over here.
Yes.
I'm like trying not to cry, whatever.
I know.
Yeah.
No, we're all like
Yeah.
tearing up. Well,
Yeah, no,
we're
just enough to
feeling,
get the corner of my eye. We have to.
yeah.
Oh, there's so many things that I would tell my younger self. So many things. I think I would tell myself, look at the experiences that you have had to this day and take those into consideration when you move on to adulthood. Listen to the people that have their stuff together, the adults that have their stuff together, and they give you all this advice. Listen to the advice. Yeah. Don't just brush it off, because they wouldn't be telling you those things if they really didn't matter. And so I would say, listen to the advice and take the experience that you have had and use it for your future.
That's good.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. How many of us have been told stuff when we were younger and we're like, yeah, they don't know. Things are different now.
They know what they're talking about.
Now I'm telling my kids things and I'm like, dang, if I just listened to
right?
That's so long,
Yeah.
better off.
Yeah.
Don't get that credit card.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah. Don't pay for 4 people on the bar sitting with you. Like,
Yeah.
no, it's all on me.
Like you're big time or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, that's my whole paycheck, bro. Like, we're gonna have to tone it down a little bit.
Yeah, but put it on the credit card even, because it's more than my paycheck.
Yes, exactly.
Oh my gosh. So I absolutely love you too, Bret and Monica. Like, this is just been such an eye-opening and feeling, and episode, and I hope that there's somebody who's listening who is wanting and needing support. Like we all need support too.
Yeah.
We all need it. We all need to feel our feelings, whether or not it has come to addiction or that point of where you're questioning yourself, like, oh, what did, this impact of my lifestyle? And so how can people listen and get that, that positivity? What are all the ways for them to reach you?
Yes. So we are currently on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio,
Anchor.
and Anchor. Those are the 5 places you can find us. Also, obviously, we're on Facebook. You can find us, Monica O'Dell, Bret O'Dell. We have a page, Addicted to Living, on Facebook. And then on Instagram, Addicted to Living podcast. So those are all the places you can find us and watch us be silly and have fun and live.
See our reels.
Yeah, your reels are the best.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you again for being here and for helping me on my own healing journey with the relationship with my sister who, went to 42.
Yeah.
From 12. That's a long time for her to have been in pain. Yeah. And so I'm also going to include, after your episode, I'm going to have a bonus episode of energetic healing for the to help with downloads, to change belief systems to use for everybody as well. So you guys have inspired me to think about how can I help make a difference for those who may not have the ability to find these resources too. So there'll be a bonus episode when we air this for my sister on the anniversary of her passing. So thank you again. And
all of our love to you. All of our love to you.
Seriously, yeah. Thank you for having us. Thank you for letting us share us with the listeners.
Yeah, I see you.
Yes, we see you.
We see you.
Yes.
Thank you. If you enjoyed this Light Up Your Worth episode, be sure to share with a soulful friend who needs to hear this message. Thanks so much for listening and being part of the Light Up Your Worth community. My heart is full of gratitude for you. You are my inspiration to shine the light of spiritual, heart-centered women. Now go out there and shine your own light, sending you sunshine.